Today, we turn our attention to the robots. Which robots? Well, the robots that send emails. Okay, there aren't any robots, but we are talking about automation. Email automation.
Let's start at the beginning then, right? What is email automation?
But email automation really is the ability to send an email based off of time, event, or behavior that's triggered to the subscribers with the actual information that they triggered. So there's 3 different types of emails. I'm going to kind of cover this. So the first is an email campaign, and that's a one-time send to a group of contacts. The next one's called an email automation or email flow. And these are emails that are triggered every single time a certain behavior occurs. So think about someone adding to cart, being on your list, that will trigger what we call an abandoned cart sequence. And then the third type of email is also an automated email. Most people don't talk about it as much, but they're super important just because the open rate and the engagements with these are super high. And that's called a transactional email. And again, email automation basically is the ability to automatically send an email to a specific subscriber or a group of subscribers based on some kind of action event or time.
When we talk about email automation, we're typically talking about 3 different flavors of automation triggers. Those are time, behavior, or characteristics. Let's start with time. When do you want this email to send? If we look at behavior, it's thinking about when someone does or doesn't do something. Then you want to send an email. Or characteristics. All people who are this, and this, but not that, they get this email. It's the time trigger, right? You decide when you want to send it. It can take into account the behavior. Perhaps you're a clothing company and you only want to send to customers who have bought from you in the past. And it can take into account the characteristics of the list. Maybe this sale is for women's jackets, so you only want to send the email to people who have bought women's jackets and live in an area that experiences weather conditions that would necessitate such a clothing item. But here's the stuff that can trigger an automation in ActiveCampaign. So you can see here, some triggers are based on time, like the date-based and RSS updated trigger. Some triggers are based on behavior. Okay, a lot of them are based on behavior, the entire top 2 rows. And some are based on characteristics, tags added or removed, or when a custom field in a contact profile changes. These triggers might vary depending on your email automation tool of choice, and there are limitless additional options when you start integrating your other tools and pulling in information about your contacts from those other tools.
So I'd first start by auditing what you're currently sending, right? So take a note, take a picture of what you're currently sending and try to figure out which of those makes sense to automate. So for example, if every single time a customer purchases from you, whether it's a product or a service, and you're manually sending a customer thank you email, turn that into an automated email, right? That email that you're sending, maybe there's some personalization that you're very specific about, but in most cases, you can do somewhat of a blanket statement that says something like, hey, so-and-so, thank you so much for your purchase. It means X, Y, and Z to me. Just to let you know, here are the details. Stay tuned for the product to ship. Or if it's a service, hey, my team will be in touch shortly. We really appreciate you, right? Obviously, you want to leverage personalization and first name. You want to relate it to whatever they bought or whatever they're interested in. But more or less, like that email could be automated. That's probably a pretty simple and straightforward one to automate that will save you time, especially if you're getting a lot of orders, which hopefully you are for your product or your service or your SaaS business. Another one is maybe every time someone signs up to your list, you're sending a personal note thanking them for joining and letting them know what it means to you. That's a great candidate for another email to automate. In that case, that would be just a welcome series for non-buyers or some kind of indoctrination sequence, right? So really, any email that you find yourself copying and pasting to multiple people, or any email that you think would be applicable to a group of people, whether it's now or in the future, and something that needs to be sent ongoing, and more or less is evergreen or you plan to update, that should be an automated email. So that's really kind of like the basic way I think about it is look at what you're doing, figure out which things you're copying and pasting, which things you're kind of routinely doing, and then just automate that. Save yourself time, make it way more efficient from that process.
So you want to start with what you're already sending. And even if you've already got some automations in place, it's always good to audit what you're sending. Where can you automate? What can you build on? And what can you pull into your emails based on your contacts' behaviors or characteristics? Email automation is so powerful that it can turn you into a cliche. You can send the right message to the right person at the right time. But you can only do that if you follow the 2 golden rules of the customer experience. Know your customer and meet or exceed your customer's expectations.
We'll make sure that we have coverage across all the core automations, at least 1 or 2 emails, And then we'll go in and add emails to the subsequent flows as we see there being ability to squeeze revenue, as there's ability to drive more engagement. So that's kind of how we do it is we start, we review, we optimize, we edit, and then we add an and or situation. So it's either the flow or the automation that drives the most revenue and or basically the automation that has the most volume. So those are kind of the two criteria. So if something is driving a lot of revenue, you want to focus on figuring out how do we drive more revenue? How do we squeeze more revenue from this, right? Maybe it's optimizing the few emails you have. Maybe it's optimizing the few emails you have plus adding new emails, right? That's potentially one. Or on the flip side, right, is maybe you have an automation in place, like getting so many people going through it. Maybe it's a customer thank you email, for example, and you have so many orders coming through that you really need to spend more time really crafting that perfect thank you message, really crafting that perfect feedback, request where you're asking people to give you feedback after they've experienced your product or your service. So I would look really first at revenue and then volume. Those are the two. And then everything else kind of is secondary. All these other automations are important, but if someone's only, if an automation is only receiving 50 people going through on a monthly basis, it's far less important than the automation that's getting 500 people a month, 1,500 people a month, 10,000 people a month. Do each flow on a quarterly basis and maybe rotate, right? So if you have, bandwidth constraints, which a lot of us do, maybe say for month one of the quarter, we're going to focus on these three. And then month two, we're going to focus on these three. And then month three, we're going to focus on these three. And then kind of start again, right? Q2 comes around, you start again. So I would look for most people listen to this probably on a quarterly basis. I wouldn't stretch it out any further than like on every 6 month on a semi-annual basis. And those are also the emails that people expect. If you have a pop-up or some kind of way to collect emails, you better serve someone an email or else they're going to be confused whether they actually added their email, right? I don't know about you, but as an email marketer, I'll go on a brand's list. I'll add my email to a pop-up. I'll be stoked to wait for the discount and I'll never get it. And I'm like, did I do something wrong? And I kind of I'm like, shoot, did I not enter my email? I'll go back and do it again. And I just realized the company doesn't have anything, right?
Right.
This isn't the best example, but kind of equating it to say you're throwing a house party or having something at your house. Could you imagine someone shows up to your house and you don't greet them, right? Like you kind of just like brush them off and you don't greet them. They show up to your house. Like that's kind of rude. In a similar sense, if people join your list and that's like your first impression, that first welcome email is your first impression. So on top of it being really high engaging, really high revenue producing, people expect these. Every other brand is going to be sending. And if you don't, you're going to be having a missed opportunity.
What are some other common mistakes that you see as they pertain to email automation?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake, and it kind of goes back to what we're talking about, like on the testing, like the number of brands. So we work with hundreds of brands. We've talked to hundreds of brands, and a lot of people make this mistake. It doesn't matter if they're a 7, 8, or 9-figure brand. A lot of people just set and forget their flows or their email automation, right? So like we talked about before, like looking at them monthly in my case, or potentially quarterly in your case. There's a number of brands I talk to, like, yeah, I probably haven't looked at my welcome emails since 2018, or my abandoned cart email, it probably could be better, but I haven't looked at it for the last year and a half.
And we've seen that it's a best practice to revisit each individual email, each automation sequence, and your email automation program at large on a regular basis to continue to improve and make sure that there aren't duplicate emails being sent, or long gaps between communications, or high engagement, high opportunity moments that you're simply letting pass you by.
I want to make sure that like if you don't learn anything other than these things, you at least have some takeaways. So you need to make sure that the copy and design are on brand. And as you're branding and as you're copying, as these things change, so do these automations. That's one. Two is, again, doubling down on the point that you have to constantly update the emails within each of your automations, right? Is you want to map out the customer journey in advance. And you want to ensure that you have email set up for each step in the customer journey. So going back to what I mentioned before, right? When people visit the homepage or new to your list, the welcome series. When people visit a collection of your product, the browse abandonment. When people add to cart, the abandoned cart. When people buy, the customer thank you. After people have bought but haven't purchased from you for a couple months, the customer win back. After people have bought from you, haven't bought from you, after the customer win back, and aren't opening emails, you want to send the breakup series, right? So there's so many different types of things that you want to set up that you need to make sure you map it out. And with that being said, you want to make sure that you don't send a customer too many emails about similar things in a short period of time.
When you know your customers, you know what they expect from you. You know what they need. And you can build email automations that take all of those things into account and create customer experiences that lead to happier customers, more customers, and people who stay customers for longer, aka business growth. Manage your customers' expectations. What do they expect? Think about the emails that you expect to receive when you're going about your daily life. Note the places that you do receive them, and they hit the nail on the head. Then note the times that you don't receive them when you expect to. Also, note the times that you do receive them, but for some reason there's a disconnect.